Good afternoon and welcome to Awaken the World. Today we present a journey of love. You asked for our story and, well, you're going to get it.
Whoops.
So I see Jennifer is here. Hello, Jennifer. Nice to see you. How are you doing?
And hi, Jennifer. This is really awesome to have you on the other side of.
Yeah, try and speak up, honey.
Oh,
I'm
used to the other.
No, she's not used to anything, actually. So this is the problem. So, honey, you're going to have to speak loudly and clearly into the microphone for people to hear you. So go ahead and introduce yourself again.
Okay, I am Kelly, and I am the person that usually is on the other side of the computer trying to operate it.
Oh, you're on the other side. All right.
The other side.
Somewhere on the other side. So I had previously commented, I'm not sure why. So Kelly, go ahead. You get to start this. This was your big idea.
This is my idea.
Sure it was.
How did that happen?
I don't know, but you go ahead and you start while I work on the technical stuff here.
Okay. Well, I was trying to think of a way to make this as short and concise as possible.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. Just give me a minute. Yeah, this is what I get all day, is this right next to me. It's wonderful. I love it. Anyways, what I wanted to share with you guys was some of the things that I've gone through in my life to get me to this spot. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes. Can I have 5 minutes, sweetie? I can have 5 minutes, right? I'm going to try to do this in 5 minutes. Anyways, my background was religious, and I came from a family of ministers and pastors and missionaries, and I mean, a lot of it was really wonderful. My upbringing was centered on...
Speak to the camera, sweetie. People are in the camera, not in the video.
I was talking to myself. Hi. Forgive me, this is new for me. And I grew up with this God sense, which was wonderful, but that started crumbling as I started getting into my later years, my 20s. I was going to be a pastor's wife, a minister's wife. I was in Bible school. I went to Oral Roberts University. I was in music. I was the quintessential setup for being in the religious circle. And like I said, a lot of it was really wonderful. I sensed God on a lot of time, a daily basis, and I loved it. So I always had that God sense, I guess you would say. But things started to fall apart, which, I mean, I thought they were falling apart. Now look back and go, no, that was probably a really good thing. But I wanted to share some of the synchronicities, and I'm going to try to just, like I said, try to keep this really, really short. Meeting Garen was not an accident, not at all. He was planned in my life before we were even born here. What got me there, though, was going through several marriages. Sounds pretty bizarre. I've been married 2 times before Garen. My first one was the gentleman I was going to be a minister's wife to, and he left because he was also bisexual. So he left with an evangelist that was gay. That was my first kind of shaking of my faith per se, and that was I started questioning some things at that time. I actually thought I'd lost my witness as a Christian. Divorce was not something that was looked upon lightly. In fact, I was never supposed to get married again. That was really, that was considered a sin before God. And like I said, I considered God a really serious part of my life. And
so you became the Liz Taylor of the Christian world.
Yeah, only 3 times, sweetie. I think she did better than I did. I intend on quitting here. So anyways, 10 years later, I went ahead, and I had always wanted children, and like I said, I started questioning some things, and I was told not to marry somebody that wasn't equal to me, which meant from a godly family, really steeped in the religious, sect, someone that I could really serve with. And I went against my parents' wishes and married another guy, my second husband, and I thought that was going to be for life. Thank you, sweetie. And I was very serious about the relationship, and it was to be forever, because I already was kind of feeling a niggling of condemnation there in the background. That abruptly ended when in 2006 I was presented with my husband and a little girl that turned out he was touching and was convicted of pedophilia. That shook me to my core. But being that I was this religious person and Christian, and I was going to stick it out. In fact, I decided that it was going to be part of our testimony that we were going to survive this. I had 3 children by that point. One was 4, then one was 8, and the other one was 10, 3 boys. And I was going to make the best of the situation. So I continued on in the relationship, and 7 years to the day of being told that he was touching a little girl and had, was convicted of pedophilia, 7 years to the day, first synchronicity. I found he came and told me he was leaving me for a 15, 16-year-old girl. He wasn't a 15, 16-year-old girl. It was another woman. Sorry. I found out later he was with a 15, 16-year-old girl. Now, that sounds really horrible, and it plunged me into a place of desperation. Let's use those words. And that was the beginning of my really deep search. I kind of it turned my life upside down, because I was like, okay, there's something wrong here. I'm not supposed to be divorced a second time. This is not in, God's will, and this isn't working. So what I did is, the year after he announced this to me, I fought with all my might to not let go of the marriage, and started searching on my own. And where it led me was to places like Abraham Hicks. I looked up thousands probably of near-death experiences, and started looking into where I went after I died. Was I really going to go to hell? Like, that was, he's got it figured out. Was I really going to go there? And as I dove into the near-death experiences, it showed me some other directions, and I started questioning more. And I'm going, oh my goodness, Muslims aren't going to hell. Buddhists aren't going to hell. If you're gay, you're not going to hell. The experiences were not showing me that. And so, like I said, it started causing me to question, did I have the only way and the only answer? And up until that point, I really thought I did. It was just that my life had turned around and upside down. So during that year, to survive, I listened to Abraham Hicks probably, 12 to 16 hours a day, just to kind of keep me rooted and grounded and not going crazy, because like I said, my whole world was
you're crazy.
I am. A lot of people think I am, yes. That's all right. I'm learning. That is all right. So anyways, I still was hanging on to the marriage. I still was like, okay, I'm going to make this by God's will. But my direction started going in a different place. Like I said, I started seeing things differently. Even in the church, I started going, oh my God, this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And I started kind of living a hidden life, because I was not really in agreement anymore with what they were saying when they would tell me that I was going to hell, and that everyone else was going to hell if you didn't accept Jesus. And I happen to love Jesus.
There's going to be a lot of us that are having a big party.
And so I started, like with Hicks, I started looking for places like joy. I started asking every morning. I says, I want to see examples of joy. And this happened after about a year of really soul searching. And so I would wake up in the morning and I would make my prayer, or whatever you want to call it, and I would beseech God and I would say, I want to see joy this morning. So one morning in particular, I got up early and I went grocery shopping. And I do these little rounds because I'm a thrifty person, and and am I past the 5 minutes? Give me 5 more minutes.
Well, just take all the time you want.
And
just remember that some people are commenting too. You have to,
I have to read
pay attention.
too.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so
I'll get
Jennifer
back to
says
that.
you are a born speaker.
And
I said from Christian Goody Two Shoes to heretical witch in one step.
Okay, just a minute. This is the important part now. This is the synchronicity of life, and this is where things started really picking up for me in understanding. So this is super important. I prayed for joy one morning. I walked into a grocery store and doing my little grocery cart thing and picking up the groceries. I walked past a clerk that was stocking the shelves, and I got down to the end of the aisle, and what did you? Okay, this is what I want you to.
Oh no, this is your story.
This gentleman, I'll say gentleman, at the
Gentleman.
gentleman.
Oh boy. No,
I didn't know
that's
who
a
you were.
mistake.
I didn't know who you were. He called out while I was at the end of the aisle and said, "Choose joy." And I turned around and just did a hoop. Yes. And went on my way down the aisles, and I was kind of shaking my head and going, wow, what just happened there? And it kind of set me on a different path that day. I just was like, wow. I shared that story actually with a whole bunch of people, my Christian friends, and everybody was like, wow, that's just so cool, you know. And I'm going, okay, God, thank you. You know, I've always believed God listens, or source listens, or our creator listens. And I went into, more positive thinking here. So I thought, okay, I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to ask to be shown compassion. And so I very specifically started concentrating on compassion and asked the divine or God to show me compassion. And, oh, this is really important. I got to put a little insert here. I never saw the face of the clerk that yelled at me. I mean, not yelled at me, but called out to me. He didn't yell at me. And so I asked for someone to show me now compassion. And again, I got in my little grocery mode. And the following, I think it was a couple of weeks later, I walked into the same grocery store. And as I was leaving, I looked over and I saw this gentleman next to me, helping some elderly people. And as he was doing it, I was, I don't know, about 30 feet away from him. So I couldn't really see. My eyes aren't that great. But I sensed the compassion that he was showing these people. And I just turned around and I started bawling. I was just really teary watching this. And I didn't realize that he noticed me, but he came over and he gave me a hug. And I don't know if he said anything at that point, but he gave me a hug. And so I left that day and I was like, thank you, divine, for showing me. Now, I didn't realize at the time it was the same person who had called out about the joy. And I was just, just putting this together. And I'm like, thank you all the way home for showing me compassion. And now I'm still in this I'm still in with the axe, still trying to figure that all out. And next thing that happened in my life synchronistically, I woke up one morning and called up my mom, and I asked her, I says, you know what, I just feel like doing something really kind of spontaneous, and let's go to the park and meet for a picnic. And it's not something I did a lot of. I was really super busy all the time, so I didn't take time to do stuff like that. But I grabbed Daniel, who's my youngest, and we went for a picnic with my mom at this park. And we're sitting there and we're just chatting away, having a good time. And this man on a bike comes riding up to us, and he has a little helmet on, and he sits down and plops himself down on our right next to our picnic and starts chatting away. But as he was talking, he started talking about meditating. He started talking about some of his past, about why he was here. And I looked at him. I didn't know who he was. I was sitting there, but I wasn't uncomfortable at all. And normally somebody just coming up and plopping themselves down, not knowing who they are, makes you kind of comfortable. Not at all. I was like, okay, there's something different about this person. Well, at the end of the talk, I don't know, must have been about 10 minutes, with my mom there in Danyon, he wrote out his number, and I think he had said, you know, he'd been meditating, and I had come to him in his meditation, and I was like, okay. Now, in this talk, he had also mentioned that he was a monk and had been so for 20 odd years, which meant he was also celibate. And so there was nothing, how do I say this? I still wasn't putting anything on it. When he gave me his number in front of my mom, I just was like, you know what? I think this person has something for me. And I felt really inclined to phone him up. Now, being that I was this Christian girl, backtrack here a little bit, it wasn't something I ever did. Like, while I was married, I didn't call guys up and go for coffee and meet with guys. And even in the year that my ex was doing all this stuff, I wasn't online looking for guys, dating services and all that. That wasn't part of that. But this kind of was important for me because I was needing to let go, and the universe was kind of yelling loud and strong at me. I needed to let go. Well, the clincher came about a week later when my ex came back and shared with me that he actually was wanting to leave with a 15, 16-year-old. And it turned out that she was a friend of the family, and she was dating at the time. Now, this is going to sound really convoluted, but
you need to speak up.
Oh, convoluted, but she was dating my youngest son. Some more details in there. We won't get into that.
Your oldest son.
My oldest son. Sorry, my oldest son at the time. But I was being asked to not ever say anything and not hurt her. Don't bring it up, or else, I don't know. It doesn't really matter what else. So anyways, that kind of left me in a place of, I think this is pretty much done here. So I had the strength at this point to just call him up and call him on and say, look, I'm done. I'm done. In fact, I'm going to go for coffee tomorrow with this guy who calls himself the monk, and bye. And so I did. I went for coffee the following day, called him up, and said, I'd love to go for coffee with you. Not so much, I wasn't even really thinking dating. I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a date. I just really felt he had something for me. So there's some more synchronicities that came up after this, but I would like you to take over right now. So go ahead.
Yeah, good job on that 17 minutes.
17 minutes.
Yeah, honey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if there's anyone who's not comatose yet, I know I was having a slight brain aneurysm there.
I still love you.
I love you too. Okay, well, most of your details are a little bit confused. But that's okay. So in the store, I hadn't actually yelled out to her to choose joy. I had turned to her as she was walking by, and she was engrossed in something else. And I had said to her, you can choose what kind of day to have. Oh. And that was kind of how that played out. It wasn't an older couple. It was actually a Native woman in a wheelchair and her sister, and they had just lost the third sister, and she was quite upset, and they didn't really have this feeling that I could tell they were really disconnected from their own cultural viewpoint on things because they were more upset about her death. So I had a talk with them about it and reminded them of what their own heritage said about that. And that was, Kelly was actually at the till at the time and paying for her groceries. And she started to cry watching what was going on with me and these two women. And I was just finishing with them and noticed that Kelly was crying. So I walked over to the till and I gave her a hug and said, whatever it is, it's okay. And yeah, and you know, that's really about as far as that had actually gone. I mean, the story to me isn't in the details. And I guess that's where I, you know, really don't have a lot of patience for that when it comes to myself or for others, to be honest with you, because all the details are the same details. It doesn't matter whose details they are. They follow that egoic structure. They follow that pattern of being. The really important part to pay attention to is what happens when you are open. Right, and what happens when, like, what is the general process of life? So, you know, Kelly's giving you a snapshot of her life. So let's look at that snapshot a little bit closer for a minute, from the point of view of awakening. Okay, so she comes into this world. She's born into a very closed off, deeply Christian family who feel that they have the only way and that they're a part of a long line of, you know, God's chosen people sort of deal, even more so than the Jews, apparently. And this is the foundation for her life. And of course, as I've said before, the beautiful thing about religion, and because it does serve, but it doesn't serve for very long, is that it introduces you to the concept of a larger force at work in your existence, of a divine presence, something larger than the physical. And you know, the trauma that Kelly went through that, and then, you know, the first marriage and subsequent marriage and all the events, none of these events are bad. They're all leading you towards this awakening, right? All leading you towards evolution, step by step by step. And you know, when Kelly and I first got together, she used to say how much she wished, you know, that she would have been able to have kids with me, and that she wished her life would have been different, and wished, and I said to her, I said, you know, that's not the right mindset. That's not lining up with the truth of things. In fact, your life has been exactly what it needs to be, as was my life exactly what it needed to be. The beauty is not in the story. The beauty is in the synchronicity that continues to evolve us forward, to continue to bring us to higher and higher states. And eventually we begin to notice that those things we truly desire begin to manifest in our lives all by themselves. It's very subtle. You hardly, you know, in Kelly's case, it wasn't so subtle. I mean, when I met Kelly, the reality of it is she was drowning. She was. The only thing that was out of water was the tip of her nose. And I used to joke with her and say, it's a good thing you got a good-sized nose, sweetie, because it was the tip of your nose that was out that I grabbed onto and pulled you up.
That was pre-planned.
Yeah, it was pre-planned. Yeah, it was made that way. And she was so energetically depleted from constantly going against what she knew to be right. And that was that, no, it wasn't right to be cheated upon. It wasn't right to be in a relationship like this. It wasn't right to be But of course, you know, she had spent a whole lifetime growing up, well, you do what the man says sort of deal. And that's been one of the hardest things to kind of detrain Kelly
Yeah,
out of
it's huge.
is, I said in day one of our relationship, and I'm constantly forced to bring it up with her, is, quit trying to hand me your power. You decide. You do. Don't limit yourself. Even before the video, Kelly was running around, and I said, "What's the matter?" And she says, "Well, I talk a lot." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Once you get started, you're just like me." And she says, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" I said, "What do you mean supposed to do? Just go ahead and say what you want to say." But she was so worried about going on forever. And
See, I only did 17 minutes.
yeah, but you only did 17 minutes, so you did really well. But here's the thing, this is what we do, and it's not about having someone in your life. It's really not. Because ultimately you have to be in a place where you are actually ready for someone. Kelly was ready for a change. But she's still not quite there yet where she doesn't need me. And that is my fondest wish for Kelly, is for her to no longer need me for anything. To be so self-assured and so self-confident and so whole in her being that she doesn't need me or need anybody. And need is different than want. You can want to be with someone, you can want to share your experiences, but when it is a need, then you're handing all your power away. And that's the biggest thing that, in a relationship, the one way you can help yourself out the most, and this is both sides of the relationship, is to be wary and watch for the other person trying to hand their power to you or trying to put the responsibility for how they're feeling on you. And instead restore that responsibility and that power to them as gently as possible. I admit it, sometimes I get a little frustrated with Kelly because it'll happen like 5 minutes after we're talking about it. And she'll try and hand me that power over. And I'll say, "Honey, we just talked about this. I don't want your power. You keep it. You use it."
Yeah.
I mean, everything works exactly. The one thing that this has shown you, I think, more than anything, is that everything works exactly the way it needs to be.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is you see it more as you go along. Like, I can truly see how my life and all the events in it brought me to the place that I am. Like, I needed to be knocked over the head really, really hard, because I would have, and I actually told Garen this. I says, if I'd married some nice little Christian guy and had been faithful and all that, I would still be, I would never have started venturing out and searching on my own. Like, I would never have started looking for the truth on my own.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of who I am.
Yeah. Remember to talk to the camera.
Oh, sorry. Just because of the nature of who I am. And so I needed, not that I wanted it, no one ever wants to be knocked over the head. And I certainly would never have guessed that I would have been knocked over the head quite that hard.
Oh, yeah, I whacked you in the next week.
Garen definitely did that in more ways than one.
It needed to be. I mean, Kelly's energy was so depleted. She was at the edge of committing suicide. She was, really thinking there was no reason to live anymore. That's how desperate it had gotten for her.
And that sounds really morbid and awful. I would never have guessed I would get to a place like that. But when I contemplated, like, I drove recklessly. I just really didn't care what conditions it was outside. I was like, actually, the worse the better. I was like, oh, I go over the cliff, it's all right. So that's the mindset I was in. I wasn't that
and the pain.
Yeah, it wasn't that I was like looking for, to take a gun to my head, but I just didn't care anymore.
Well, it doesn't matter which way you do it. It's the result is the same.
Yeah.
Right? When you give up on living to the point that you feel so trapped that you see death as the only way out. Yeah. And that's kind of the place where Kelly and I had met, and it was really interesting because we had gone. I was speaking at a large spiritual conference that was happening in Kelowna, and I had invited her to this after our first meeting, and I was one of the speakers. They were putting me up in the hotel, etc. And we had a really wonderful experience there. It was really great. Kelly bought one of her friends, and on the drive back, she said, "Well, this is probably going to take about 2 years." And she was talking about transitioning from her existing relationship to us. And I remember I actually laughed, and I said, "Boy, sweetie," I said, you just don't understand how the universe works. I said, I'll be really surprised if it isn't all ironed out within a month. And sure enough, it was. It was nearly a month to the day that we were together in the same house, and we were working on a long road of liquidating all the collected stuff. There's a real backstory there, actually, and it's kind of interesting because, I've lived as a soldier and then as a wandering monk and mendicant. And rarely in my life have I ever owned more than I could pack into an 80-pound backpack. So when I moved into Kelly's place with her, I had my backpack and 3 small boxes that fit in the back seat of the 2-door car. And that was my entire existence. And I considered myself to have a fair bit at that point. And I walked into a situation where, I think they owned 10 VCRs. Her ex had a collection of adult-sized Tonka toys. It was insanity. It really was. And it nearly drove me insane because I had never experienced that much stuff. Right? And the first thing that I noticed is that all of this stuff wasn't getting looked after. It was all starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
So we
everything everything I owned was falling
apart.
Everything, even the stuff that looked good,
only
was falling
looked
apart. The house actually we're even living in right now, the place, it was rented out, and I remember walking in, and I was in tears over this. It was trashed.
Yeah, this place was falling apart, actually. And, talk about another beautiful synchronicity.
Yeah.
Although, I figure I'm under punishment still because, restraining order in heaven and in hell kind of got both sides. I'm stuck in the middle here on earth for 3,289 years now. It's a while. But, fortunately, all the things that need to get done, I just so happen can do. So that's another beautiful synchronicity. So, I've done all the work in our place. Kelly's done all the painting, and we've made this place our own. And that's the thing about anywhere you live. Your situation in life is always a remnant. Yeah. It's always a leftover of the way you used to think, the way you used to act, and the way you used to behave. And it takes time for these remnants to disappear unless you can slice right through them. And in the case of Kelly's life, I took a big samurai sword to it.
I kept asking him, couldn't you just done it really gently? And he says, you know what? It was too far gone. It had to be cut from the root. And it was I have to be honest, there was some pain involved with that sword.
Yeah, there was some pain.
That's been hard because it put an axe to so many things in my life very suddenly all at the same time.
A sword, honey.
Sword.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. My cuts are much cleaner than an axe.
Sword. And you know what? I wanted to share one more synchronicity.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. I love synchronicities.
The internet hasn't blown up. YouTube is still allowing us to stream, and look, there's still some people on.
The first time we met for coffee, it was easy. I needed it. I wanted to.
5.5 hours we talked.
Yeah, and it was so easy. It was like I felt like I'd known you.
And we never drank our coffee.
No, we didn't even drink the coffee. But I honestly had never sat down with somebody that it was so open, so easy, so just everything. It wasn't like I needed to get to know you. I felt.
Well, we already knew each other, and I already knew that we already knew each other.
Did. I didn't.
From a long time ago.
Yeah, and
a totally different existence, but I knew.
Yeah,
and did. I don't hold anything back for anyone, so I told her straight out.
Yeah.
I filled her in on the whole thing, and I said the reason why you feel like you know me so well is we've already been together. Right?
Yeah.
We've already done this once.
And that was why it was, and I have never experienced that in my life. But the other thing that happened, and I needed a huge amount of synchronicities for this to all kind of come into being, but there was one other little thing, not little thing, it was huge because I tied everything together for me, was you, at the end of that meeting, said you asked me if I wanted to get a book from you. And
look at the camera, sweetie.
Look at the camera. You had asked me about this book. And you said it was, I don't know if you told me at the time what it was.
Well, no, what had happened is one of Kelly's friends had been promising her to get this book to her for, I don't know, 6 months.
Forever.
And it never did get to her. And at the end of our coffee, I said to Kelly, well, no, actually it was that evening because we were texting, or 4 a.m. in the morning or something like that. And I said to her, I have a series of books I'd like you to read to kind of start you on your way.
Yeah.
And that series was the Conversations with God series, book 1, 2, and 3, which for a Christian, is a Christian who's opening themselves to a new sort of look on things. That's a great way to go because it kind of cuts right through the mythos and head straight to a more reasonable look at divinity.
Yeah.
And that again was very synchronistic.
It was amazingly synchronous. When you gave me the book, I sat there and looked at you, and I said this was the next book that was going to be read by me. I love to read, and that was my next book. I looked at it and I said I'm supposed to read it. So I stayed up all night, of course, and read it. And it was kind of like the clincher in the whole thing, just to help me understand how synchronistic everything had been. And nothing just happens. I mean, even that the book had not gotten to me, it was just so funny for like months. It just couldn't get into my hands until you brought it.
Yeah.
Was really, that was just one of the other things that came in. But the rest of it's been a journey. And I have to say, I have learned something new every day from you.
At least once.
At least once.
Yesterday, it was, one of the things we were talking about yesterday was the illusion we all live in. And the fun thing for Kelly, I guess, and I was kind of giving her a hard time about this. I said, it's really fun that you kind of, you get to not only be married, but you get to be married to your guru, too. She is also my guru.
Yeah.
Kelly teaches me the softer side that I still sometimes am in need of. Because for me, I don't support ego at all. Period. End of story. No. So I break it and bust it down wherever I find it, and that's sometimes doesn't work out so well. So Kelly teaches me often as well. But yesterday was the human eye and the way we see in relation to the illusion. And most people are blissfully unaware that the eye actually takes in everything upside down. Your brain automatically turns the picture over for you, quite with you unaware of it. You have no awareness that it's happening. But in fact, you take in the entire world upside down. And this is one of the interesting things that, and...
See, every day I learn something. Did you know that? Did anyone else know that?
Really,
I'd love to know.
A lot of days they're not things like that. I mean, I would say we spend the majority of our conversations are speaking in things regarding conscious awareness.
Yeah.
In discussing more how we can help grow others in conscious awareness, continue to... make an impact and recognizing where we are as a species, do something about it together. That is the beautiful thing about relationship, and I would say that Kelly's probably about 70-30 on the way there to being totally free of needing me, right? And that's where I want her to be. Because when two people are totally free of each other, when they have no need for each other at all, then the two can work in the way that serves the best. The two come together in this harmonious situation where there is no hooks in each other. There's no expectations. There's just and really, this journey over the last few years, from my point of view, has been one from consistently freeing someone who's been way too bound. Mm-hmm. I mean, freeing Kelly, freeing Kelly, freeing Kelly, free yourself, free yourself,
Yeah.
free yourself.
It's,
Let go, let go.
Yeah, it's been a lot of change and direct. Well, it feels like it's been a 180-degree turn for me, but it's been wonderful. Like sometimes it's really hard. Like
I kind of grabbed you and threw you over the cliff. That's for sure. But you needed to be.
I couldn't be happier with the fact that that's what happened. In some ways.
In some ways.
Yeah.
It's funny when we're out in public, people always say, "You guys seem like such a happy couple," and she goes, "Yeah, but you don't have to live with them."
Don't say that. What do I say? I don't say that.
Well, yeah, sometimes.
I say I'm used to this.
Or you're used to it. Yeah, that's right.
No, actually, what you see here is exactly what he is. That's the thing that I noticed. You are not anything different with anybody, anywhere.
No,
anytime.
I wear no masks.
Sometimes, and I didn't realize, like, I put on a mask. I'm really good because I grew up in the religious circle. I'm very good at putting on the mask really quick. And that's been my deprogramming. It's still hard for me at times to kind of let go of that facade.
Well, that's also the pleasing personality,
I
right?
Definitely like to please
the
people.
desire to please people in order to get what you want from them, and there's nothing wrong with doing something nice for someone else, but again, it always comes down to the why of it. If you're doing nice things for someone because you believe that they want you to, in order for them to be happy for you, so you can get what you want from them, then you really have to examine the motivation behind it, right? And it has been a journey that way, and I think it's important to understand that we are all on a journey of love. That is the real thing. You can spend decades thinking that your life is over, that you're not going to meet that right person, that you're not going to find that fulfillment, or whatever the case may be. And in fact, the universe is driving you towards it in every experience, in every encounter. And when it happens for you, whatever that thing is that you're going to recognize and allow to bring that fulfillment that is waiting for you, it's going to be something that happens within your being first, and then in Kelly's case, it was the willingness to look outside, to say, you know what, this box just isn't fitting anymore. The lies, the twisted behavior, it's not there anymore. And when you can do that, that beginning inside yourself begins to manifest out. And in the case of me, when that sea of consciousness arranged for Kelly and I to come together, believe me, God knew that he was sending in someone who was packing a really sharp sword, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
Everything had to be cut off at the root. The financial debt, the crisis that they were in, all of these things. Kelly was teetering on the edge of having her name and her credit, just going down a tube that she wasn't going to come out of. And it had nothing to do with her. It was her who was constantly trying to keep it above ground. And it really did have to all come crashing down. And that's one of the other main messages here, okay, is when things are crashing down in your life, let them. Assist them. Get excited about it. Help break it down. Now, that didn't really occur for you at first, right?
No.
But as things have gone along now, it's become exciting when things fall apart because there's something else coming.
Yeah, I actually read in that Conversations with God that is actually what happens a lot of times when something is going to happen that's good. It actually does feel like it's all falling apart, but that's not truth. It actually has to shake apart to come back together.
Well, you need to make space.
Yeah, you have to make
right?
space because you don't have. I didn't have space. Like I
No.
wouldn't have had space for you
No,
if it had been even a year or 2 years before we met.
she wouldn't have been in the right
I
space.
wouldn't have been in the right place in any way. It had to be exactly the time that it did.
Yeah. And whenever it happens, it's right now.
Yeah.
Everything else disappears. And that's the beautiful thing about it. And, for me, I waited 22 years and 240 days. And, my deal is I was just going to, I had come out of a bad relationship and had been cheated on myself and had just said, that's it. In my usual epic way, I had gone and climbed up Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa and screamed from the top of the summit that if this was going to happen, that I was going to swear off women for eternity or until the right one showed up. And, Kelly turned out to be the right one. It took 22 years. And there were times in that 22 years that it felt like a long time. But my desire was never a need for someone. My desire has always been to share, right? To share and grow together. Because when there are two people whose goal is conscious awakening first and foremost, not getting rich, not owning a big home, not making it in the society, but raising their consciousness together, there's magic that happens. There's an atmosphere in our home. There's a sense down here at the end where we live that's different. And you can feel it. You really can.
Love it.
Yeah. Are you done?
I'm done.
She's done.
Can I give you a kiss?
Oh. So that's really about it. I mean, that's our journey in a nutshell. The journey for Kelly has been a long journey, and there's still some issues with it, right?
Yeah, and I'm
her
trying
family
to.
disappeared from her life.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's been
that's
my hardest thing.
Yeah.
Is the family just thinks I've actually gone cuckoo.
well, like I said, you have gone
I
crazy.
have gone cuckoo.
Yeah, I'm crazy too.
Yeah, like you just don't leave a religious upbringing like what I've done and go off and.
No, there's penalties for leaving the club.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah.
sure.
If you stay in it, if you ask forgiveness or whatever, you can stay in the club. But
Yeah.
that's not where I went. So
Yes, and thank you for being here, Jennifer. It's
Thanks.
to be honest, I really didn't want to do this story, and the only reason being is not that I don't think there's any harm in it, but really, it's not about me. It's just not. It certainly is about Kelly, and it's certainly about all of you.
yeah,
I've been around the block, lots. 3,289 years of it, let me tell you. It's a long time. I like Earth. It's a nice planet. But I'm looking forward to a different one for a while. and the story is really about humanity.
Yeah.
The story is all of our story. We all go through the same pilgrimage. We all go through from a state of this unawareness through awareness, and there is no point on your journey that is any less valuable or more valuable than the next. There's really not. And I think this has been one of the biggest lessons for you is to drop the judgments on what's happening.
that's exactly what I was just going to say. Judging something good or bad has always been like, I'll say, well, that was a bad thing that happened in my life. And
Yeah,
that was actually the thing that was the best thing in my life.
that's right. No good or bad.
And that has been a change in my thinking too. I'm not there yet totally, but I see it. I can step back from it and see it now.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. It's about creating that space so you can step back a little bit. You can see it from that wider perspective, that larger perspective, and then not react the same way, but create again anew.
Yeah.
So that's it. We will keep our guests no longer today, I don't think. Exciting. Looking forward to the day at the monastery. We're going to do a full 12 hours. It will be I'm probably going to drag all the equipment downstairs for the day, where we do our yoga and where we have our statue of Buddha, and set up down there for the day. Namaste to you too, Jennifer.
Namaste to you too.
What else were you going to
Jennifer.
say?
We're going to do yoga with everybody too?
Yeah, we're probably going to do a yoga section. So yoga that day as well. Oh, Cindy's here. Hello, Cindy.
Hi, Cindy. I looked over and saw her name.
Yeah. And we're just talking. We're going to do that a retreat day on the 17th on a Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you can't make it all day, that's fine. Show up whenever you can. There'll be lots of lives all day, discussions, meditations. It's really a 12-hour period away.
I've never done one of those.
No, it's going to be a new experience for you too. You know, the one thing about Kelly, and there's a lot of people out there like this, you've been trained so much to feel you have to be doing something. So the concept of spending 12 hours in a state of not doing or doing things that are not what you would normally consider productive can be really tough for people.
Yeah.
It's a
That's
great
been
way
a
to
real
slow
switch
yourself down.
for me too, but it's
Yeah.
been wonderful.
So
switch.
hopefully, Cindy, you can be there. Hopefully, Jennifer too. And the way I'm going to set it up is if you can't do it that day, it'll become a whole playlist on YouTube that can be done as well.
Yay.
So that's it for today.
Yay.
That's the basic story. You know, it really is Kelly's story. It really is. I could have left here the last time I died. That
Yeah,
was
well, I
made
keep-
perfectly clear to me. I was told, as a matter of fact, the second time I died, you know what? You can stay. You don't have to go back.
I keep saying you stayed for me.
Or you can go back and stay for a while more. Do one or two more good little things out there.
Yay.
So I guess maybe my penance is almost over, and maybe after this life the restraining order will come off and heaven
see.
and hell will open their doors to me again.
We'll see.
I'll flip a coin. I've heard the swimming is particularly nice in hell. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, apparently there's a problem with the gold in heaven and the acidity of the water. I don't know. Strange. Anyways, much love to you all. Have a wonderful day. We miss you when we don't see you. Kelly is always here. This beautiful shining face beside me is always here on the piano or on her
What?
computer.
No, I don't like
Yeah.
computer. I like pianos, not computers. I don't know if you guys have noticed that.
Yeah. Computer doesn't like you
Buttons
very
of
much
any
either.
sort aren't good,
No.
but pianos work for me. So
That's what it is.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's about it. I
Yeah.
mean, we do love each other dearly, that's for sure. Hey?
It's been awesome.
Yeah,
It's been
awesome.
this has actually been way beyond anything I could have ever imagined. Like, really.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is
Like
it really doesn't feel like we've ever been apart or not been together. Like,
Well, that
God, let me tell you, it feels like 1,000 years already.
well, it has been. I know that.
Yeah, that's been. Yes, and Kelly is beautiful. I consider myself to be a very fortunate man. I really do. She's beautiful on the outside and especially beautiful on the inside, which is what really matters. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking for brownie points.
Yeah. You don't have to get them. It's all right.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah.